cost to doing the work and there's a cost to staying the same. You have to decide which price you value.
Okay, friends, welcome to another episode of the She Blooms podcast. My name is Stacey Danielle. I am your host. So excited to be joining you guys today. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Guys, I know last week was rough. Last week was rough. We were supposed to record and it just didn't happen. But here's the reason why it didn't happen. So I record overnight while I work because I work overnight and it is just a convenient time for me to record. Anyways, and so last week, the day that I typically record, I slept through my alarm clock. Yeah, I slept through my entire alarm clock. And so I woke up at 5 a.m. I missed work and I was just like, oh my God, what happened? And so anyways, I don't know if you guys listened to my self-care-ish podcast episode where my son was basically saying my daughter needed a nap. That's me right now. Like, I need a nap. I needed a nap. I needed the rest. And I do not feel bad for it because it's okay. We're here now. And so that's all that really matters. Anyways, so I have just been exhausted and tired. I have just been, I think, just overexerting myself right now in just so many different areas. Which is not usual for me, not right now. I think I've just been a little bored in the daytime, so I've been trying to find things to fill my schedule, to feel more productive, whatever. Not that I'm running from things, which I have done before in the past. I have done that. We have run from ourselves and filling up our schedule, but that is not the case. That is not the case right now. But I have been filling up my schedule and right now I'm over capacity. And over capacity Stacey with not a very good workout routine right now because I'm trying to sleep as much as possible. My diet is trash because I'm eating and then going right back to bed. We just don't have it together right now, okay? Like, I am trying to get it back together. We're making the adjustments, but very intentional adjustments of like, what can I actually keep in my life that isn't going to stretch me in a way that is actually detrimental to me long-term, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever. So doing some analyzations, which we love to do, but now it's very, very intentional about the analyzations that I'm doing because I need to be very, very present and intentional in this next season of my life. And I think that requires me to really let go of things that don't serve me, habits, behaviors, emotions, ideologies that don't necessarily serve me going into this next season, because I think as I am growing and as I am learning, I am realizing how sometimes I can be a detriment to my own well-being, and it's nice to take accountability for that and realize that sometimes you are the issue. And that takes like a lot of self-awareness, which thankfully I have been very intentional about working through, having self-awareness. How do I show up for myself? How do I show up for others? How do I just show up in relationships in general? And I have been doing some introspection on what that looks like moving into this next journey as I just release things out of my life that don't necessarily serve, that aren't authentic to what I'm doing, but more so in a sense that are damaging to being in relationships with people, because like I said, I've been going through it, just feeling drained, feeling overworked, and for the first time in a really, really long time, being like, I am not okay. I think with me, I typically isolate when I am going through stuff, because that's just really one of the only ways that I have learned how to cope, because I don't like what I'm experiencing to be a burden, right? Or not necessarily a burden, but like, I don't need you to now kind of like have this involvement in my personal experience or my personal circumstances, when one, you can probably not solve the issue, or two, it's between me and God. And but I also felt the heaviness of really no one asking me if I was okay. I am very, very intentional about my how are you. In fact, I remember when I first went to therapy, or I first started going to therapy, and I remember being so upset. Like, I remember telling my therapist, like, I am so over people asking me, like, saying, are you okay? Like, just as another form of hi. No one actually really cares if you're okay. And that's true. We often use how are you doing as another form of hi without actually caring or having the time to check in on people intentionally. And so I know that life is heavy. I know that life is hard. And I know that I'm a type of person who will suffer in silence. And so when I am reaching out to people and asking them, how are they? How's their heart? Like, it's giving them, one, it's because I have the capacity to listen and hold space for you while you process what's going on. That's probably the only reason why I'm really asking, to be very clear. But I'm intentional about that because I know that I have been one to suffer in silence. And I never want people to feel like they are invalidated in relationships with me because I'm not checking in on them. But I felt myself getting very, very upset, to the point where I lashed out, which is uncommon for me. Well, not very uncommon. There's a lot of things that really annoy me. I'm not even gonna like front in front of you guys. But small things right now, because I'm not taking care of small things, the little things in my life, right? Such as getting good sleep, getting good meal, taking care of my physical health. These things all play a huge impact on how you respond to perceived threats in your life. And I've noticed that perceived threats or not even inconsistencies, but inconveniences, that's the word that I'm looking for. Like I said, I'm tired. Inconveniences, how I'm responding to these things are bigger than how I would typically respond to them if all three of those areas of my life are actually taken care of and are actually on track. And I don't think people realize that, like, anxiety shows up as irritability. And why am I anxious? Because I know for a fact my self-care routine is like kind of like crap right now. Like, I know that I'm not eating right. I know that I'm not working out. So I'm feeling anxious because I'm trying to figure out, how do I get back to this place where I feel balanced and my schedule makes sense And I'm also parenting, and I'm also working, and I'm also doing this. And those little things become bigger things because I'm not taking care of me. But so I sat with myself over the last few days where I wasn't really engaging with people. I really genuinely needed my space to kind of process what I was experiencing, why I was experiencing it, where am I falling short on, what can I actually control in this moment. But the funny thing is that I actually got, during my time with just like spending with God, you know, I always talk about the dangers of Instagram, and I'm never gonna stop because like there's just always something. But we often talk about people are gonna be so upset that I'm saying this, by the way. We often talk about people protecting you physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I'm sorry to all the relationship coaches out there. It is no one's responsibility to protect you emotionally. And before you guys come for my head, let me tell you, there's a difference between holding space for someone who is processing something that is emotional for them. But what happens is that we often want to have people take on that emotion that you're experiencing and experience it with you in the moment and protect you while they're also protecting themselves. I have been working in social services for the last, I want to say 6-7 years now, mental health services. And there is such thing as secondary trauma. And what that is when you are constantly taking on the emotional needs of others, you actually do experience trauma, which actually leads to burnout a lot faster. We have to be very, very careful and cautious of the way in which we're asking people to show up for us. Everyone is going through their own life experience, and life is hard. And when we are asking someone to be a part of our madness or take on our madness as their burden as well, it becomes overwhelming for this person too. And I had to realize that there are moments where I have been like, oh, they're not showing up for me emotionally. Like, I literally have said, like, this person like does everything for me. Like everything for me, like everything that I could ever want in a relationship. But that emotional component aspect is missing. And I knew, I've said this a few weeks ago, that I knew I had to sit on this. I had to like really reflect on that aspect of it, of what exactly did I mean by that? Because it's easy for us to hear something and assume it to be true just based off of that person's credentials. And you don't have to listen to me. Like, I hope and pray that the Holy Spirit like touches your heart so you can actually discern what I'm saying, because I am not saying that someone needs to be emotionally volatile to you, and that's okay. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we often put our emotional needs onto our relationships and overburden them, and telling them that they need to have empathy, telling them that they need to do this, they are experiencing their own personal crisis. Like, they are going through their own personal journey. They are experiencing things just like you. It is your responsibility to ensure that you are emotionally taking care of yourself. When you are not emotionally taking care of yourself, it is easy for us to seek that externally rather than going inwardly. And like I said, I am not perfect. I talk about self-care, I talk about self-awareness, and there had been this component in my life that I have been questioning. And I have been sitting with this question for the last, I want to say 2 months. And it was finally revealed to me when I needed someone to show up in a way in which they didn't have the capacity to. And so I was forced to do that for myself. I think about this in terms of kids, right? Or babies. We are often, like, I'm a mother, so I can say we, but if you are a mother, you know that when your baby is crying, you are supposed to nurture it, right? Like, you are supposed to teach them how to deal with that emotion, right? You are the emotional bandwidth for that child that you're responsible for. But in that, you are eventually teaching that child how to emotionally regulate themselves by making sure that they have their needs, right? So a baby, they're crying, they need a diaper change, they need a bottle, whatever the case might be, they just want to be held. You are that emotional support for them. But as they grow, and if they are properly nurtured, if they are properly nurtured, they begin to do that themselves because they know what they're needing in that moment. Especially if you are a conscious parent where you're like, oh, you appear to be very upset. You appear to be very angry. You appear to be very sad. Like, do you need this, right? You are teaching them how to emotionally regulate themselves. But what happens is when you don't have that emotional regulating sounding board as you are growing up, you are still trying to navigate how to emotionally regulate yourself, especially, right? Like, if you had parents who are emotionally volatile, like, for you, you're always like, there's anxiety, right? Like, you're gonna blow up. There's explosivity associated with that because you haven't figured out how to navigate your emotional needs because you've only seen one extreme. I know for me, right? Like, I know that if I'm emotionally going through something, I will shut down. But I also know, like, I had emotionally absent parents. So, like, for me, I had to be my sounding voice. Like, I had to go internally to figure out how to cope and deal with life and deal with my emotions. And I'm still working on that community aspect of it, but I'm starting to realize that, like, there's no community aspect what you need to work on internally for yourself. And what I have realized is that we are looking for parents in relationships, like intimate relationships, friendship relationships. We are looking for parents. We are looking for people to heal the inner parts of us that we never fully developed. And that is a dangerous place to be because it is overburdening your relationships, it is overburdening your partner, and they don't have to show up for you in that way. Again, they can hold space for you and be there for you, but they don't have to do that for you. It is your responsibility. You are your own responsibility. And as I kind of sat with this question and as I was going through this realization, I've realized that we are often trying to find ways to get all of our needs met in a relationship, and that's never been the case. That has never been how it has been intended to be. If we are actively trying to get all of our needs met in a relationship, it is not leaving space for God. It is not giving Him the ability to step in and nurture you. And when you are not allowing Him to step in during those intimate moments, or those moments where you really need to press in, anything is capable of being your God. And I think we have to really change the narrative of what we're expecting our partners to be. I think we need to change the narrative of how we view how we're getting our emotional needs met. And if we are trying to figure out ways to get our emotional needs met in a relationship, you really need to reconsider, like, how many relationships have you actually damaged in the process because you haven't been able to identify that that is no one's responsibility but your own.